beautiful people, and welcome to this week's video. This week I really wanted to do something that I've had in my sketchbook for quite a while, and since I thought I'd play around with the Himi Gouache and play around with some mediums that I'm not 100% confident in, I thought I'd talk about accepting mistakes within your art. Now, this is something that I do fairly often, and I understand that it can be quite difficult for you to accept those mistakes in your art. I think that mistakes or like things that go wrong sort of help with the process of how a piece is made. They imperfections, so to speak, are what make your art your art. Now, sometimes we can't see the forest through the trees, and what I mean by that is essentially sometimes you'll draw something and it'll be absolutely perfect, but you can't quite see what's wrong with it until you take a step back and re-look at it. And that could be down to the initial sketch stage. Maybe you just didn't spot something there, maybe it came to the actual colouring, maybe something just wasn't right. And a lot of people get themselves really down with this, but I'm going to tell you now, there is nothing on this earth that is perfect. Nothing. Even the greatest artists will look upon their pieces and see every single flaw that lies within. But to someone else, that piece of art is going to be absolutely stunning. But to you, all you can see is the mistakes. And that's really difficult. It really, really is. For me, I've sort of started to come up with a mantra. Well, I didn't come up with a mantra, it's a mantra I remember reading in high school, and it was finished, not perfect. And I remember in particular, it was a teacher that told me this: finished, not perfect. That all the piece had to be done, is to be finished. It didn't have to be perfect. And that can be very, very difficult because, especially in this sort of time, we want our outward expression of ourselves within our art to be perfection, because we want to see perfection in everything that we do. And that's really, really difficult. And I'm going to tell you now, everything that could have gone wrong with this piece went wrong. I don't know what it was. I've been really, really busy with working on a store update as well as getting ready for Comic-Con lately. So even though I'm massively inspired, I don't have as much time to showcase a lot of personal work or even film videos sometimes, because it's just on 24/7. It hasn't stopped. And I really wanted to take some time out of my day and just do something for myself that I've been meaning to do for a while. And these are some prickle pieces that I've been wanting to do with limited palettes with gouache. And for me, gouache is sort of that medium. It really gels, either really gels with me, or everything that could possibly go wrong goes wrong. And with these pans, it's sort of like, because I've got them and I use them so much throughout May, I want to use them until they're completely empty. So I've been trying to do some experimental pieces with it, especially with colour, and trying to push my boundaries. And even though it may not look like I'm pushing my boundaries because it's another drawing of Prickles, my cactus cat, it's the colour palette that was my thing, using a different medium. And everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong. I wanted to do very, very clean lines. It wasn't working, so I went in with a wash. That wasn't working. But I'm really happy with the end result because I pushed and persevered through it. It's one of those mistakes can make or break a piece of art. You can either push through something and it will turn out much better than what you anticipated, or you'll push through something and it just wasn't worth it because the final result is not what you wanted. And that's okay. Mistakes make an art piece. The imperfections make the art piece because it can help you grow as an artist. I now know, looking at this, what I would do to change this. Now, I was umming and ahhing about using gouache because, yet again, with these ones in particular, especially with the Himi Gouache, I find that sometimes I can't get the colour flow that I wanted. I'm not getting quite my colour story. I was trying to avoid doing lines. That's why I did pencil, very light pencil work, so that I could go over with the gouache. I wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone as much as I physically could, even though it's a drawing of something that I really enjoy drawing. Pushing yourself out of your comfort zone can really help you grow as an artist, and you're going to make mistakes. And this is a thing that can be very, very difficult because you just want to excel at everything that you touch. I do. I'm a terrible perfectionist. I want everything to go right and be right, but the matter of fact is, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And you're going to make mistakes even when you are learning with something, or if it's a piece of material that you have known for years and years and years. If it's something that you've perfected in your own mind, you're going to make mistakes. That is the long and short of it. You're going to make mistakes, and it's how we accept those mistakes in our art that we can grow as people and as artists. There's going to be a stage where you look at everyone's work that's around you, and I do it, I'm terrible for it, where you look at everything that everyone's doing and it just seems so beautiful. Like, I see some digital art, and I stopped doing digital art for quite a while because I felt that my digital art was getting very stiff, and that's why I switched over to traditional for quite a long time, and now I dabble between the two because I think it's super important to keep both those skills up. And I see these amazing digital artists whose skills far surpass mine, and they're much younger. And, you know, sometimes that does make me go, oh God, what am I doing? But then I have to think that something just clicked with them sooner than it has done with me. My work isn't a painterly style. It's a very graphical, textured style. I embrace the imperfections because it makes the art what it is. And sometimes I found when I did do digital art, my digital art was too clean. It didn't have those imperfections. And traditional art taught me to accept those imperfections and make it a part of the art. The mistakes became the art because there was no undo tool. There was nothing like that. And it helped me to accept those mistakes in my digital art as well. Doing both really has taught me a lot, and I'm still finding new ways to continue and broaden my illustration journey. And it's all thanks to mistakes. And that sounds really, really weird to say, but there is so much that you can do to grow as an artist from the mistakes that you make. Whether or not that's a flaw in anatomy, a wrong choice in colour, you can then, after you've done the piece and you can take a step back and relook at it, you can, instead of going, oh God, this is terrible, you should go, okay, this part is good, but this could be worked on. For me, I really like the vibe that this piece sets. I love the idea that Prickles is like lay in this large amount of plants. Like, he's clearly where he shouldn't be. Very much based on all cats, let's be honest. But the colour story didn't quite go the way I wanted to. I wanted to work with a limited palette. I really wanted to just work with greens and blues, and in the end I did a brown because I didn't want to go into the black tone, just because I've been trying to avoid doing black lines when I want to create a softer illustration. And the thing that I found that I first started with was I was trying to be too clean. I found that with gouache art in particular, it helps me if I do like a colour wash down so that there is no white showing through on the paper, that the lightest colour that will be on there is already on the wash. So I should have actually washed this with a yellow, because that would have really helped pop a lot of the tones that I did. I found that towards the end a lot of my colours were looking muddy because I went too dark instead of and not light enough in the original wash, so that it was going to hurt my colour story in the end. But now, upon looking at the final piece, I actually really like it. I like the colour range that it has. The only thing I really massively dislike is the bee. The bee just does not work. I think if I was to do this piece again, the colour of the bee definitely needs to be punched out a lot more. I'm actually looking at the piece now, and even though I've created that really soft vibe that I was after with the final piece, the bumblebee just doesn't work at all. It's either that the background area where it is not dark enough, or the colours on the bee are far too muddy and don't stand out enough. And that's okay. imperfections can make the art because it helps you understand where you went wrong and how you can analyze it. But it's difficult to get to that point. And I know it's difficult to get to that point because it's taken me years to get to the stage of where I've gone, okay, it's not perfect, but it's fine, it will do. And this is super important when it comes as well to working with deadlines for clients. What a client is going to see and what you are going to see is going to be two very, very different stories. So you may say something to a client and you're like, oh, I don't really like it, but this is what the client wants. And the client sees it and is like, this is fantastic, love this, beautiful, 10 out of 10. And you'll be like, yeah, and you'll be like, it's not really what I pictured, but that's okay. It's what the client wants. And sometimes you're going to make mistakes along those ways, especially with a client work. So a wonderful story that I can tell you from my time at university, from what my tutor told me, there was a particular student who was working with a card manufacturer, and they kept saying, we need it to be more generic. We need it to be more generic, which is a very wishy-washy term. But what they were saying was they wanted less detail. They wanted it simplified. They didn't want all those beautiful details that you know are going to make that piece so much better because they have a vision for what they see. And in the end, she did what the client wanted. This person did what the client wanted, and the client was very, very happy. But for her portfolio, she looked at those mistakes and she tweaked them. So she had two variations of it. This is what the client wanted, and this is what I would have done for the same brief. This is really, really important because then you're looking at two sides of how a brief can be approached. And yet again, looking at your mistakes and fixing them. There is so many things that you could do. And the issue that we have with perfectionism is we're constantly going back and fixing things. The best way to look at it is if you read manga or if you read comics, if you go to the early stages of the seasons of the series, you will see how drastically different the art looks in the beginning of a book or of the manga or of the comic versus what it is now. And this is because they've improved. Now, if you're constantly going back and fixing those old pages, those old mistakes, your story's never going to get told. And this is about accepting those mistakes and moving on. I constantly do it. I will go back and fix and tweak and fix and tweak. And guess what? That project never will come out because I'm constantly trying to fix those mistakes. Sometimes the imperfections make the piece what it is. You want to grow with your art, not constantly stagnate and go back trying to fix all the things that you see wrong with it. That's why I think redraws are super important as well. Redraws are a way for you to see how far you've come along your art journey, how much you've changed over the years. And while some people may still feel comfort in the older art, or you may look at the older art and go, oh, but I still really like how I did this, that's okay. You are going to change within your art journey. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, trust me. I've made them. I've made so many anatomy errors during a lot of things, but it's about knowing the rules to break the rules with anatomy. You've got to understand how things work to be able to break them and make them and develop your own version of that. Like in cartoons, like the best example, Adventure Time, they all look like spaghetti arms. They all have like the spaghetti loosey goosey arms, but there's still an understanding of how things work and why they work. It's amazing if you look at the series and how they've grown over the years. I think a really interesting thing for me in particular is to watch how anime, and this is a huge example, if you look at the original Fruit Baskets anime versus the new Fruit Baskets anime, you will see that the story pretty much remains wholeheartedly almost to its core the same. The original didn't, it followed the majority of the story, then went wayward because the story wasn't finished by the time the anime was. This happened with Fullmetal Alchemist. This happened with quite a few animes, and they've gone back, redone the anime, redone the animation, and redone the story to fit the original, but still pay homage to the original. A good rewrite of a series will pay homage to its original creator, because even though the original may not have been perfect, it still holds true to a lot of people dear and near. You may look back at your old art and see all the mistakes and see all the imperfections, but you've got to remember how you felt at the time creating that, how proud you were, and instead of picking out all the things that were wrong, look at the things that were good about that piece. Why did this piece speak to you so much at the time? It's finished, but it's not perfect, and you must have been so proud of it at some point. I look back at some of my older art and I go, I really, really like this. I can see where I can improve now, and how I can improve in certain things. And sometimes I'll redo a redraw, and the redraw isn't quite as good as the old piece, but that's okay. With your art journey, you are going to change, and that's completely fine. It can be quite difficult to look at mistakes and not want to rip up the piece of paper and throw it away. Sometimes if something isn't working, it isn't working, but don't throw it away. Look at it with a constructive eye and see, okay, this is why it didn't work. How could I improve? And that's very, very difficult to do, but sometimes it helps. I know in particular up on the Discord, we do speak to each other, especially if we are struggling with colour stories, with say the placement in certain pieces. I do it all the time with my art friends. Like sometimes we're just chatting online and like, hey, I've got this piece, but I don't know how quite I could fit this. Do you have any tips? And we will help each other all the time, because even though like we're all in the same business where we're technically competing, I think it's really important, because sometimes someone else can see what you can't see and help you fix what's wrong with your illustration. Not that it's something wrong, but how you could improve it. Sometimes my partner will look at something and go, that leg's too straight, and I'll go, yes, but that's how, the line of action goes. I guess, yes, but it's too straight. And I go, oh yeah, he's right, and like have to tweak it here and there. Sometimes I go, no, he's wrong, and then I'll look at later on and go, yeah, he's right, actually, let's be honest. And that's just, sometimes I'm stubborn, and that's all right. But then it's going back, understanding, and fixing, and that's okay. I know I've repeated that mantra many a time, and you're probably going to look at this piece and go, there's nothing wrong with this piece, but I can see all the mistakes in it, but I still appreciate it for what it is. I like it a lot. I love the colours. There's just things that I'm looking at and I could go, I could tweak this and this would make it a better story in the illustration. So that's it. Sometimes mistakes are just there. They're a part of your art. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I really cannot wait to see what everyone's creations are. If you ever want to tag me in a piece of art, please do up on socials using the hashtag #StayCreativeWithSophiralou. I think it's really important that we all share our art journeys and create and have fun together. Remember to love what you do, keep drawing, and as always folks, stay creative.